His name is Douglas Giffen, and he is a real example of how you can transform your life to create a better life experience in this world. Please stay and enjoy this conversation. I wanted to share my screen to show who is this guy?
Right.
And then
same guy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. When I have when I look at that picture of myself as well, it's like another whole other life, a whole other period or chapter in my life that was on a completely different path, completely different mindset, completely different trajectory in life. And when I see the picture also, I can see like even the kind of toxicity in my skin and just a very in an unhealthy state of being at that point in time. Really just in all areas too, just in a physical sense, in a spiritual sense, relationships, finances, everything was really kind of coming to a difficult time. And like a lot of people, when you get to that time, there's not much left except to try and maybe surrender and somehow keep your head above water. And that's really all I was doing for a number of years. And that person was a very busy person, busy with work, busy with life, mostly with work. Had all the things that we aspire to, or we think that will become the source of our happiness and joy, like a home and cars and prosperity and money and all of those things. And yet really found myself at the lowest point in my life, even though I had all of those things.
How do you feel now?
Feeling now is, this is the quality of life that we can live once we develop healthier philosophies and healthier lifestyle, something that's much more in tune with our natural bodies and the world around us, really, because I think that the life that we live, or we're programmed to live in, creates an incredible amount of disturbances and journeys that we have to go through. So it's always remarkable for me to look back, but I also feel that was the blessing, and that what began a trajectory into a much healthier living and lifestyle, which then created the opportunity for continued growth and expansion and learning. The quality of life is, I think, the greatest thing and the gifts that we can have right now. Once we adopt a good living lifestyle, then we can really move forward on things. Yeah,
it's very hard to change, but there's always like a moment. There's always like a day. There's where your mind makes, I really have to do it. I don't know how it was for you.
Well, it was. A lot of it really happened in one day. And I guess the other question that comes up with all of that is that, we often wait or arrive at the lowest point in our lives, whether it's on a spiritual level or a physical level. Usually it's manifested in the physical body with illness. And this is what happened with me. Nothing incredibly serious, but I had woke up one day with incredible pain in my abdomen area. Felt very, very sick. Felt worse than something normal, like a bad stomach ache or a stomach flu or something like that. And I decided to go to the emergency room at the hospital. And and it turned out I had a condition called diverticulitis, which is actually usually a geriatric condition. This is something that old people get. It's the thinning of the intestinal walls, the large intestine. And so what was actually happening to me was that my large intestine had become blocked with my diet of red meat and stress. And my lifestyle, which was really led up to all of these things. And so I was going into what they call a septic shock, because my food waste was now seeping into my bloodstream. And for me, it was the doctor basically said, well, you have this condition and now you have to live with it. You have to be much more careful about your digestion and things like that. But my whole life I'd suffered with poor digestion and stomach pain and stomach cramps. So that day I decided to stop eating meat, which I haven't eaten meat in now over 10 years. And the other part is that that day sitting in the hospital, because of all the other things that were going on in my life. At that time, I was working with a marketing company as a corporate sales trainer, doing 3 or 4 public speaking events per week, doing sales presentations, sales seminars, recruiting seminars for this marketing company. And at the same time, I had a day job running a guitar department for a large music store chain. And had a lot of responsibility there. It was incredibly busy. And so for many years, I just worked. That's all I did was work from morning till I fell asleep. This was affecting all the other areas of my personal life, my relationships, my family, everything like that. And so it all kind of came together in this moment in time, this great epiphany or revelation of my life, is that this was not the life that I wanted. This was not, I was doing this to please others. And on a deeper level, just mainly to win the love of my partner and to win the love of my father. And I had become somebody, a persona. I was good at it for a while, but at this point in time, when sort of you feel like life is maybe drastically changing for you or could result in more illnesses, I made that decision that I was going to stop that path, and decided to end a 22-year relationship and quit my job. And I always dreamed about living in Costa Rica. I've been traveling there on holidays for many years, and I said I'm going to try and spend 6 months out of the year or part of the year out of there. I don't enjoy the winter or the cold. I live in Canada, and the winters can be very harsh sometimes, very dark. And I really just needed to reset my body and reset who I was. And that became, that was the decision that day. And I guess about a month later, in my desire now, after moving to a vegetarian diet, for the first time in my life, I felt normal in my digestive tract. This can be a huge thing, right? You know, and
wow, that's crazy.
And a month later, I walked into my first yoga class, and I thought it looked easy, and so I joined my first class. Within the first few minutes, I was sweating and shaking, and but I loved it. It was bringing me back to my source, bringing me back to myself, feeling myself again. I couldn't touch my toes. I was very overweight at that time.
How old were you at that moment?
I was 45. Yeah, and that was 10 years ago now. Since then I've continued with my yoga practice. In 2017, I went to Rishikesh in India to study. This is where I learned palm reading as well, and it introduced me to yoga on a larger broader sense. And I didn't really have the goal or plan to start teaching, but people started asking me to start to teach, especially the folks who'd seen my progress over those years, which of course Montezuma was a big part of that whole experience for me, and the great teachers that are living in the community down there. And so it really started to expand my world in so many ways. Yoga is a to me is a much more of a tool, mechanism for us to first of all, in order for us to begin to work on healing our own minds and our own consciousness and our own past and all the things that have kind of created this tapestry of who we are. We have to heal the body, and so this is the main concept of doing the asanas, is to actually begin to physically heal the body. But the asanas are just that, a way to bring the body into alignment and to focus and to heal the body, so that then we can start to work towards the other aspects of healing ourselves. And so, I think that yoga's probably played a major portion of that, because then it introduced me to the yogic texts, the philosophies, which is really what I've expanded the most and found the most helpful in my own progress of my mental health and my spirituality and my overall peace and happiness in life.
What do you think would have happened if you would have made these changes in your life?
I think that I would probably continue to suffer from various illnesses, heart disease, diabetes. I was very overweight at the time, and I think that stress is one of the major, if not the major, cause of illness. And so I see that if I'd stayed on that path, I would have suffered a lot more in that. And but I look at all that experience as just a huge the blessing, the opening, the awakening of my life. And to the last 10 years have been really incredible and magical in a lot of ways, and not in the way that a lot of people might think, because a lot of people might think, oh, you were able to just go off and live in Costa Rica. Well, I'd just gone through a separation, divorce. I basically had decided, mainly because had spent so many years totally focused as just a good consumer, and racking up the debts and the credit cards and doing all that stuff, that I became very repulsed by even having things. So I gave everything that everything I had that I could to my ex, and sold everything else off, paid off debts, things like that, and kind of just freed myself. Really my first 2 seasons in Montezuma, where I wanted to pass the winter, I lived on the beach in my hammock with a tent. I didn't have the money to get a little house or rent a hotel or anything like that. But it was perfect, because it was me totally connecting with nature and being purely in the moment. In the moment is where we find our peace. Otherwise, the mind is constantly living in the past or the future. And this is where all the disturbances come from, because we reflect on the past, maybe more often, or can be more often, on the difficult things or the unresolved things, or we're speculating about or projecting into the future and worrying about what could happen or not happen. And so these are just imaginary states of mind most of the time, and they're just repeating stories or surfacing your fears. And so the one thing that I wish on anybody is the ability to take the time to truly reset with the body and reset with nature. And just living on the beach with the waves coming in was just the constant rhythm of life for a number of months at a time. And so I really think that those were really key moments in, yes, coming back to self and self-discovery and finding what real happiness is.
Do you feel happy now in compare how you were like 10 years ago?
Where I was in that space was in a state of crisis, health crisis, mental health crisis, physical health crisis. So no, it was a difficult time. Many things happening all at the same time, and I think it's interesting. It's just the universe telling you. It said, you have to change, yeah, or you're gonna die. That was my feeling. Is if I didn't do it, I would die. I would be dead in 10 years, or explaining to my daughter how I had serious illness or something like that. And that was part of the compulsion to grab onto change. Unfortunately, most people wait until those times, or they don't get the chance. They don't believe they can. And that's why I think the power in sharing my old photo versus my present photo is that change is possible, and that you can actually have significant impact on your life. And it begins with simple things, like it begins with food. It begins with getting rid of some stresses in your life. And that's once people have that taste of the freedom, it's like liberating yourself of a lot of your material possessions, the things that you just keep because you have space for it, but really you don't use or need. And once you start to liberate yourselves of this attachment to the material, and are able to give yourself your own time to learn and to study. It always depends on our age. I think, when you're younger, you have your different focuses and instinctual patterns of creating a life. But as we age, I think we want to learn more about how we can become connected to ourselves, be connected to the divine or God or whatever you'd like to call it.
There's so many people who want to change, but they don't have somebody who guide them,
Well, it takes courage to do that. I think that's something I've always had, is a little bit of an adventurous spirit, belief that everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out. But I think, I did have teachers along the way, and these were in my yoga teachers and in other people that come through your life. If you're awake and aware, there's people around you that are there to bring you some kind of lesson on yourself. And I think that going into, reading the philosophies and reading the texts and starting to explore the mind and understanding the mind and seeing how it operates and seeing how that, the main premise of yoga is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the elimination or the cessation of the mind wave patterns. And so and that's why it always comes back to, okay, is the body good? If the body's good, then it can focus in on other things. If the mind is generally where we need to work, then we need to understand it. Many people are sometimes struggle because of in their path they feel, oh, I'm not really progressing. I can't meditate. I can't do this or that. Well, it does take some guidance and to be able to do that, but it also takes some learning and some understanding of how our mind actually works. The mind, essentially, as I mentioned before, is living in this past and future thing. This is the ego. This is the preservation of the physical body. And I see the physical body as this bridge between spirit and health,
Mm.
and so the two of them have to really all come together. And so
Yeah.
practice is always essential. But I think once
Mm.
people start to be able to get to a point where they
Mm.
become observers of the mind rather than
Mm.
reactors to the mind, because the mind will just react, and you can have a feeling or a sensation about an experience, and you'll create an emotion which creates a chemical reaction in your body. If it's negative, this can be the source of illness in your body. And so working on the mind is the most important thing. The other aspects of yoga, the asanas and the breathing techniques, are just the tools to prepare yourself for meditation. And meditation can only be possible when the mind is quiet. And so learning how to quiet the mind, learn how to recognize mind and see, like I ask myself sometimes nowadays, it's like, oh, is that thought in the past or is it in the future? Just to take notice, just to observe. The mind is subtle. It just does whatever it wants most of the time, right? If you ever ask yourself, tell yourself, I'm going to stop thinking about that, and what happens minutes later? You're thinking about it again. And so the mind can be rogue and undisciplined. And so this is, I think, our most important path in learning, and that's the main part of what the yoga path is about.
For me, my personal practice is that I wake up, and then I take some time for me to be grateful for what I have. And other days, if I have a problem, I just try to feel the problem. And sometimes, I, and I ask myself, how can I solve this? What, what is the meaning of this in my life right now?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an answer coming all the time.
Sure.
I don't know how it's for you. You're saying like exploring the mind. Is like how you do it. How do you explore your mind?
Well, I think that it comes to the point of doing that, just moving from, look, when we're young, when we're children, we're living in a reactive state. We want, we cry, we laugh, we love, whatever. We're really in a child state. We're really in that pure blissful state because we're in the moment. But as we kind of progress, we continue to have reactive states through our younger parts of our lives. And this is, this wide open person, but not aware, not conscious. And I think that once we gain life experiences, and we have heartbreak, and we have different conflicts or problems that come up, we can, if we want to, we can begin to observe that, oh, well, maybe, and a large part of it is some taking responsibility in all things. Whatever is happening to you is part of your own creation. And so
Yeah.
taking some responsibility is the important thing. But especially in the healing of consciousness, if we're moving from a place of reactive state where we're just responding to whatever our experience was, our fears, our traumas, our lifestyle, anything like that, we're just reacting to that. But once we realize that this is actually causing damage and we're part of the problem, and this is when we can at least become aware of our tendencies. Let's say, many people say, they have abandonment or trust issues in relationships and stuff like that. So, well, now when you say that, some people will be at the point where they say, well, I have trust issues, so you just have to accept that. So that's still being in a reactive state. It's not taking responsibility. And so it's when we come to a point where we can be in it, we realize, okay, well, this ain't working, hopefully, or you just stay in that state. But if you're progressing in your consciousnness, then you'll arrive at a state of being able to say, okay, I'm aware that I'm doing it, but maybe you're still doing it. So that's the first step in observation. The second step in observation is being able to say, okay, there I'm feeling that emotion, because maybe the emotions won't go away because they're part of a deeper pattern. But
Mm,
the emotion emerges and say, ah, I realize that this emotion has led me down these other, bad ideas in the past. And now
mm.
I'm looking at this emotion, and I can feel it. And I say, well, I'm not going to project it into the energetic field. And that's really the first step of consciousness, of healing your consciousness, is to become the observer of the mind and realize that it's this entity that ultimately operates to preserve the physical body. I'm referring mainly to the ego mind here.
I can speak for myself. When I was in my 20s or I was in my 16s, that I was very reactive. I didn't have any awareness of my behavioral patterns. I didn't have any awareness that what I was saying was hurting people, or that my thoughts were not really truthful, or somehow when I started meditating and I started like being more aware of my feelings, then I realized, oh my God, I, I, I feel like this in these situations, and this is leading me to this reaction, and this is leading me to problems. But
I guess you can come to that realization sometimes because there's evidence around you that your behaviors and your emotional reactions are either causing you emotional disturbances or others. And so I think it's when you just start to come to some sort of realization that this is happening. When in relationships, for example, people won't speak their truth in the relationship because they're either afraid of being punished or
yeah,
it will create a conflict.
yeah,
And so there's always going to be a breaking point. If not, then it's an even more tragic story. But most of the time, there's a breaking point in our lives where, like I say, even to my atheist friends, who I'll say, at some point in time in your life, you will get down on your hands and knees and pray. And sometimes it takes that.
yeah, yeah. It takes that to say, man, I gotta change my life right now.
I'm not happy. I'm not at peace.
Yeah,
Everything else
yeah,
was an illusion. Everything else was,
yeah.
if they said if I, had a good job and made good money and found a good partner and got married and had kids and had a house. Now I know
Mm,
people that have all of those things, and and maybe they are completely content and happy. Not everybody has to live my lifestyle, is my point.
yeah,
Not everybody's, destined for living on the beach in Costa Rica. They
yeah,
still want to just,
yeah, yeah,
but that's just your level of courage, right?
yeah.
People will begin to feel like, okay, well, and also the biggest lesson that I started to put myself through, the test that I would put my through, whenever I think of anything that I need, or is it need or want? And then I have to really
Mm-hmm,
weigh
mm-hmm,
what it is that my choices that I'm making.
mm,
But we have to be, I think the key to all of those things is one is, yes, unfortunately, a lot of times it takes getting to a point of desperation or sick and tired of it, and something has to
mm,
change.
mm.
And,
Yeah,
and if you're there, if you're, watching this and you're listening to that, and you're at that point in your life, so be calm, but
yeah,
go
yeah,
do
yeah.
yoga,
Sure.
go to a yoga class. And from yoga classes, then you can start to learn some techniques on how to meditate. And most of the time, a teacher can
Mm,
give you some baby steps towards meditation
mm,
that will help you learn. It's not so when people say, "Oh, I can't do it," or "This is hard for me," or whatever,
mm,
it's okay. It's hard for everybody, but it's not hard.
mm.
Also,
Yeah,
to actually give 10 minutes of your life to just being, just
yeah,
sitting
yeah.
only with your breath,
Mm,
sitting with um, your inside vision, or if you find it easier, you can stare at something. A candle works, maybe an icon, a beautiful picture, looking out the window even. All of those things. But meditation also occurs in different forms too, that I think that where we find ourselves. And really what it is, to me, it's being completely present, being totally there with no thoughts of past or future. Only what is happening, you alone, without your labels, without your identities, without all the your subconscious programming, past life, all of that stuff, where you are just in that simple state. And that can be found in, you know, like I'm a musician, and so when I play guitar, I'm there. I'm like, that is one of the more deeper meditative states for me.
As how you just said, there's a lot of ways to find it. For me, I go dancing, and when I'm dancing, I'm present. You know, if I feel sad, if I feel like stressed, I go dance, and then while I'm dancing, I'm completely present, and that is a beautiful meditation for me.
It's your soul asking you to connect, because our whole lives, our whole experience had been a disconnect from ourselves, to play a role, to be a persona. You're, you know, you live in this country, you're a man, you're a woman, you're a doctor, you're a mechanic, you're, you know, all of these labels and identities that come from our parents meaning well, from society saying, this is how you make a good life. This is how you're supposed to live your life. And these are the rules you need to follow if you want to join that club. Yeah. And most of people are feeling empty in that pursuit. And so maybe it does take to that time to get on your knees where you just say, please give me something, because I'm desperate. But maybe you're just at the time in your life where you say, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not happy. I want something else. And I think all of the steps require looking at yourself.
I think sometimes we don't know what a good life is. It took me also so many years to realize that I'm not living a good life, even though I had all these things. Yeah. And I think that is a beautiful moment when you realize, okay, this is a beautiful life. When everything is in balance, my body's in balance, my health is in balance, my relationships around are in balance. Right. When I feel whole, when I feel happy, when I feel that I love myself and I can share this love with somebody else.
Just begin. Yeah. Begin is all you can do, is begin. Yeah. And yeah, it comes down to just starting, and maybe even for many people just starting to even consider that they might love themselves. Yeah. Yeah. That's very important. And do all the things that set you free. You know, there's a physical thing that you can, almost like a physical test, when you have a thought or a direction or something that's going on in your life. Does it make you feel contracted, or does it make you feel like it's expanding? And so even our bodies sometimes are telling us that we need to do something. And so maybe a lot of people who are in a lot of body pain are constantly contracted about their lives. And so it manifests in physical forms, all of those things, the lifestyle, the stress, the inability to connect with ourselves and our own emotions, really. Our emotions become a part of our persona even. Yeah. So I just say begin with love and patience. Be kind. Yeah.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Thank you so much, brother.
Yes, brother.
I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was great to talk to you.